host of the Good Girl Podcast, a podcast of women's confessions about our faith, flaws, femininity, and culture. Today, we're talking about culture. A lot has been happening in the world, not just in 2020, but especially these past 2 weeks, heavily focused on Black Lives Mattering. And I was having a conversation, as I normally have my conversations, random times at night, random times during the day, with my friend, my homegirl, Danielle Moore. And we began to talk about Black women mattering in this moment. It began to make us question, Black women, who told you that you didn't matter? And so Danny was like, Cam, turn on the mic. We need to talk. Girl, turn on the mic. We need to talk. So that's what we're going to do. If you don't know who Danielle is, first and foremost, she's my friend. She's my friend. She's also a licensed mental health therapist. She has her own practice, the Refresh Wellness Center, that focuses on telehealth therapy services. And this is something that she's been doing for years. This isn't something that she just started to do when COVID happened. This is a center of her business. And so I'm excited to have your expertise. I'm excited that you, my friend, Danny, now we can have this girlfriend conversation. And just so we can, I guess, reveal some things that maybe we didn't even know about ourselves and that we're doing as women.
Absolutely. You know, I'm always on board for a good girl chat. Hey, y'all.
Hey, y'all. And so how do we get on this topic, Danny? But honestly, we started. I was reading this book. It's called Unprotected Text. I think it's hilarious, the name of the title, because it's about sex and sexuality and the Bible, all this other stuff. And me and Danny started to talk about. We just kind of went down the rabbit hole, and where we ended up really was about women's roles in biblical times. And that led us to the question of Black women, who told you you didn't matter? And that's where we started.
Sounds about right. That's exactly where we started. So I was talking and you said, hold on, let me write that down. Because I said, who told you you didn't matter? And then I, started to elaborate on that point and say, well, we've been being told to put ourselves on the back burner for other people and their needs first from the time that we were toddlers.
Yeah.
From the time that we are little babies ourselves, we are given little baby dolls and being taught to nurture and care for little baby dolls and stuffed animals. And then we are inundated with Disney princess movies where we're being taught to prep and prime ourselves and wait for Prince Charming to come and sweep us off of our feet so that we can, melt into his world and uplift and uphold him and whatever his agenda is. And there are very few messages that empower women to fulfill their own purpose and destiny and have their own unique identities, their own dreams, goals, and aspirations, fulfill their own purpose prior to even considering the integration of, marriage, integrated lives with a spouse. And that just led me to think about how cisgender roles are oppressive, mostly to women. And we went on the rabbit hole and the rabbit trail about how, dating all the way back to biblical times, women have been treated as the property of their fathers and the property of their husbands, so much so that women are identified in the Bible by their husbands without their names or by the location where they live, such as the widow in Zarephath. We don't know her name. We know her story, but we don't know her name. We know she was a widow. Mm-hmm. And so we know she wasn't a single woman who just had a child or what have you. She was identified as a widow. There are few women's names that are mentioned in the Bible. We know the story of the woman who had an issue of blood and who had great faith, but we don't know her name.
We
And
don't know a lot about her.
we don't know a lot about her.
And it makes me think too, Danny, that when you talk about how women were identified in the Bible, a lot of them were identified by what they decided to do with their sexuality. You know,
Hmm.
if they decided to sleep with multiple men, if they were a mother, like in reference to a man for the most part.
You were
And
either a wife, a concubine, a prostitute, or a certain woman, or a widow. Those are the identifiers.
yes, overall. And so when we are asking this question, who told you you didn't matter? Those things easily seep through our conscious, and we aren't, I don't even think, aware of them.
They're microaggressions.
They are. And how do they come across in spaces like our faith spaces? Like, how do they come across in the pulpit? How do they come across? And even girl boom, even when I think about how some institutions, how some churches are structured, when if the majority of your population, the majority of your congregation is women and everyone in leadership is a man, that's hugely problematic.
Very
And
problematic.
and it's someone telling you that they know better for women than you know better for yourselves. Like, never consulting, never just having a real basic conversation about what are your needs? Are we meeting your needs? Are we missing the mark? Why don't you come over on leadership so you can help inform some of these policies and how we approach this type of text? And again, some of those little things that show us that we do not matter.
I think the ideology of that goes back to Adam and Eve and in the Garden of Eden. And I feel like, this whole narrative that it was Eve who was deceived and, that women don't know how to think for themselves. And so they have to be told what to do. I think some of those narratives come back from that time, where people, put their own spin on the scripture.
Mm.
But we don't hear a lot about, how this whole narrative came about that women became wives and concubines, because, of course, God created Eve. When it was just Adam and Eve, there was no marriage ceremony or anything like that. And so, it's interesting to go back through biblical times and try to figure out the history of when women started being oppressed. And it's like, did this start happening as a result of what happened in the garden? But at the point in time when the things happened in the garden, if you want to be real technical, Eve didn't have a name yet. They were both called Adam.
Mm. Mm.
And so, I just it just really makes me think about, like I said, where did all of this stuff come from? But the point is, women have been oppressed back to biblical times, and made to feel and be invisible through microaggressions and overt aggressions, which is why women still today have a hard time showing up in spaces and advocating for themselves, practicing self care, asserting what their needs are and what their desires are without having them attached to being a wife and a mother.
And how does that show up today? Because that's why we're talking about it. I saw a really good friend of mine status, and now if this is you, don't get mad at me because I don't remember the status verbatim. But it was the last line in her status. Well meaning, I get it, everything. The last line in her status was like, you know, we need to speak life into our men, our Black men. We need to lift them up. If you see them on the street, speak life into them. And I was like, you're right. Amen, sister. But the other thing, I was like, what about you?
About you.
What about
Who's
you?
speaking life into you while you are carrying the weight of the world and Black men on your shoulders, ma'am? Who is speaking life into you?
And I think it's this idea that we aren't oppressed either. we're not oppressed as bad as they are. So you get into that kind of comparative trauma. Like, well, he's oppressed more, so let me pour into him, or let us pay attention to him. But what has been shown across the board in society, that we all of us still at the bottom.
Black women in particular, I've said in previous conversations, trauma is trauma and it affects us, the way that it affects us. And so to try to measure it back and forth is an unhealthy comparison, because when a person experiences trauma, you may not think it's as big of a deal as some trauma that you experience, or you may think that something they experience is a more bigger deal than something you experience. But your bodies, your brains respond to it the same. But I would go as far as to say that it is most egregious when women experience trauma and they are expected to not be able to speak up about it or to expect it. Kind of like when a woman wears certain clothing items, she should expect sexual assault, either verbally or physically, from a man. It's like you should expect that. We are expected to normalize the things that happen to us, and not to respond, not to have any type of response. We're supposed to be numb to it. Yeah. We're not supposed to have any type of response to it. And that is chronic exposure to trauma. And so,
and what does that turn into? Chronic exposure to trauma. What does that turn into?
Chronic exposure to trauma turns into mental distress that turns into physical issues, where your body, it's like your body keeps score of the trauma that you are experiencing, and you start to have a physiological response to the trauma that you are experiencing. You may be carrying some type of pain, some type of GI, intestinal issue, something with your womb or reproductive system, pain, all in your body as a result of a trauma exposure that is unresolved and unprocessed, because you just normalized it as, oh, this is what's supposed to happen. You know how this goes. And so, like, women are expected to be resilient. They are expected to be able to show up and to perform as their full selves, as if they are not experiencing chronic exposure to trauma. And that creates complex and multifaceted issues, mental health issues in particular, where it affects your mood, where it affects your ability to be able to focus and concentrate, and where it affects your performance and your physical health. Additionally, women are, at some point in our cycle, 100% of the time, you are either pre or post ovulation, and pre or post menstruation or menstruation. But 100% of the time, you are at some point in your cycle. And so your hormones may be doing anything from a biological perspective. And then you intersect that with chronic exposure to trauma, overparenting, underparenting, all types of other things. And women are supposed to show up and be fully present and perform and do everything that it is that they're supposed to do.
And the thing about it is, we accept it though, and I don't think we realize how we accept it. We accept it when we are proud of that strong Black woman narrative. We accept it when we put ourselves second. We accept it when we assume that we have no trauma and it's all about the children, it's all about the man, it's all about the husband. We accept it when all these things are happening, and this idea that trauma, I think my mom has told me, so many times in so many ways, to kind of just Like you just got to keep it moving. And I think that that comes from because we've had to just keep it moving because our priority was honestly staying alive. Our priority was what we assumed were soul basic needs. Like, do you have a safe place to lay your head? And do you have food to eat? Like, that is my priority. Everything else, you crying, whatever, you'll get over that. But the reality is that, like, your body keeps score and it shows up in so many ways. And so we're having this conversation, especially during this time. And I think about the movements that are occurring and the movements where Black women have consistently been on the front lines, have consistently been organizing. And I'm not just talking about one time, I'm talking about over time. I've done social justice work, I've done equity work, and who's been at the table? Black women, okay?
Every time.
Leading, leading. And so they're the one managing so-called the organization. They're the one thinking past everything else. They're the one that's nurturing and caring and bringing other people on board. It is Black women. And so when we accept this narrative that it's all about somebody else, we are doing ourselves a disservice. um,
Literally martyring ourselves.
Literally. And then this, I like even something as simple as most people, I don't know if they know that the Black Lives Matter movement is founded by three women. It is founded by three women who
Yeah.
centered, who didn't center men, who centered, and if I'm remembering correctly, who centered, I believe it was queer, uh, queer Black people because they were the most vulnerable. And when you think of any type of work and systemic change, when you center the needs of the most vulnerable in a population, then in a sense everybody else rises along with that.
Yeah.
And somehow, some way, this guy, I won't say co-opted, but we forgot about those people along the way because
Yeah.
I think we naturally, because of what we were taught, because of the very intentional and the very intentional and conscious and unconscious things that seep into society, that seep into our conversations of putting ourselves second, not making ourselves a priority. Because of those things, we allowed ourselves to sit in the back seat. We are like there, and it's so real because it's times when I feel like I have to push my mom to the. I'm like, Mom, what about you? What are you doing?
Yeah.
What
I
about?
have the same issues with clients. It's the biggest issue that I have with clients is them practicing self-care and putting themselves first. And it's with my female clients.
Mm.
It's the biggest issue that I face with them. They find it to be such a struggle. Like, what do you mean practicing self-care? What did I do for myself? I asked the client what she did for herself, and she told me something that she did with her husband.
That is
And so, you know, women sacrifice their physical and mental health for their husbands and their families and for causes. And there's this expectation that they're going to find fulfillment and
girl.
that they're going to be refreshed and replenished and that their needs are going to be met by them doing that. And then they end up disappointed and they end up depleted and fatigued and drained and overwhelmed because they don't end up getting what they need because what they have taught the people around them is that they don't need anything and that they are there to support them. And so you sit around with a lot of women who don't overtly communicate what their needs are, and aren't able to articulate how they can be best supported, and so they end up with their needs not being met. And so, one of the things that I try to focus on with my clients is helping them to understand that they have a responsibility to take care of themselves first, and that they can't continue to pour from an empty cup, and that they will always end up in mental health crisis if they don't actively practice self-care as a preventative measure instead of being proactive after you're in crisis and then having to be walked through steps by a mental health professional to say, what exactly are you putting in place to make sure that your mental wellness is intact and that your physical health is intact, that you are, receiving enough rest, that you are hydrating, that you are getting proper nutrients, that you are getting vitamins for the nutrients that you aren't getting through food and the sun, and that you are just getting your baseline level of functioning together so that you can just show up for yourself and then add anything to that. And it has been a struggle for most clients who are female to implement self-care practices and stick with them because they have been indoctrinated with this microaggressed idea that you are supposed to put yourself last. It is very hard for a lot of women, in my experience, to be able to practice self-care without feeling guilty about it, especially if they are a wife and a mother. And women who are single, who practice self-care and who have good boundaries are considered to be selfish and self-absorbed. And so there's this narrative that anytime a woman does something for herself, that there is something wrong with that. And so I've just been trying to get women into a headspace where I get them to stop caring about what people think about their practice of self-care, because at this point they need to be able to survive and thrive. And they're not doing well surviving by sacrificing everything that they have mentally and emotionally. And a lot of them are experiencing compassion fatigue, where you are serving and supporting other people at the expense of yourself. You are supposed to support and serve people as an extension of what runs over from you, but not to the detriment of yourself.
The thing about it, though, that has become the definition of womanhood. I don't know how we got here, but this idea of serving everyone else has become, in a sense, the
all sacrificing
of a woman. Like, oh, she gave her life to this. Oh, wow, she's a woman. Oh, she's serving in the kitchen. And not to say there's nothing wrong with serving. Serving is great. It feels good when you serve, but when you do it to the detriment of your own self, it's like we almost like beat our chest, like, oh, I'm dog dead tired. When your body put you to sleep, or when your body tell you you got to sit down, you got to, and we say it like it's a badge of honor. And it is not. This is not the definition of womanhood. And I think too, what comes along that, in terms of, again, who told us that we didn't matter? We talk about, well, I'm going to sacrifice, I'm going to serve, I'm going to do all these things that serve everyone else. And I believe that we tell ourselves this story that, in a sense, someone, something, God, a man, some magical unicorn is going to come save me and advocate for me and repay everything that I have poured out. That's what we tell ourselves. But
it's not just what we tell ourselves, it's the narrative that has been kind of indoctrinated into us, that if you take care of man and you take care of your children, you're in turn going to be taken care of as a result of that. And oftentimes it is just not the truth. Oftentimes women are being left high and dry, mentally, emotionally, and physically. They're being left holding the bag for themselves, having to pick themselves up. And I once heard Iyanla Vanzant say, with regard to the scripture, my cup runneth over. What's in the cup is for me. What runneth over is for other people. If my cup isn't full, and it doesn't run over, I don't have anything to give for anyone else. I need to give to myself first. Because what happens is when you don't give to yourself first, you in turn have unrealistic expectations of other people and
Girl,
end up being bitter when your needs don't get met because
girl.
your needs got met first. And so the responsibility is on you to make sure that you practice self-care, that you get everything it is that you need, and that you do not compromise your time of self-care for the service of others, because in order for you to serve anybody long term, you need to make sure that you have what it is that you need to show up and be fully present. People want to show up and be fully present and forego the work that it takes in order for you to be able to show up and be fully present. And the work that it takes for you to be able to show up and be fully present is for you to practice self-care, for you to make sure that your needs are met first, that you get everything it is that you need, so that you don't have an agenda with other people where you are manipulating them or where you are having unrealistic expectations of them to do what you didn't do for yourself.
Listen, and I wait. I just, I swear, I need like an offering plate on this show so I can pass it around, and I need that. I need that. I think that this idea of somebody gonna come and help me. I mean, I'll say this. I've heard it too many times in church where it's like, if you take care of God's people, God gonna take care of you. I've heard it so many times. So many times. And it creates this almost guilt. It feeds into that narrative that you aren't doing the will or the work of God. And I also
Also
think,
feeds into that narrative that there is a savior that is coming in to save the day. It feeds into the Prince Charming and the whole
romanticize it.
yeah, which contradicts the word of God.
Girl,
It
girl,
is not about your works. You are saved by grace through faith, not because you took care of God and he gonna take care of you. Those are tactics that are oftentimes used to manipulate parishioners into giving their money.
girl. Whole word, whole word. And the reason I'm so passionate about this, because I don't know if we understand how much that this narrative of putting ourselves second is connected to the freedom we have, how much it is connected to how or whether we enjoy our life or not, how much it is connected to us fulfilling our purpose. And if we don't understand this, because there are things that are inside of each one of us that I don't think anybody else will truly fully understand. And we are the only people who can advocate it, who can manifest it, who can work it. And if we're constantly waiting on someone else to say, oh, this is what this is what Cameo's soul needs. This is what Danielle's like, it's not going to happen, because no one has ever had your set of experience. No one knows like what you're feeling like. And when I think of the very unique layers that make up a human being, that create their perspective, so much goes into that. Why I like certain colors, why I like certain foods, whom I attract, why do I wear my hair like that, what books do I like to read. All that informs what my soul needs. And it is dang near impossible for anyone else on the face of this earth, other than the Holy Spirit, possibly moving through one person at a specific point in time, that will know what my soul needs consistently. And for us to put that much weight on someone else or some magic thing coming down without doing any type of work, I think is ridiculous. And not
Come on, church.
and and ladies, I'm not, ladies and gentlemen and humans, I'm not like yelling or going in on y'all, because we understand, we kind of laid out the framework. How did we get here? This is how we got here. But I just really want to stress I want to stress how important it is for us to begin to shift the narrative, especially in times like now, where it is so easy for us to slip into that mode of I need to take care of everybody else.
It does God a disservice if you show up in this life and you delegate the purpose for your life to someone who didn't create you. If you show up in this life and you do not, I made a post sometime last year that says life isn't about evading sin, it's about fulfilling purpose. And to unpack that, to unpack that statement, I said it would be the biggest sin to leave this earth and not fulfill your purpose. God created each of us with an individual purpose. And for you to be lackluster and lazy as a woman, to believe that it is your sole purpose to be somebody's mother and somebody's wife, baby, you missed it. And this is why so many women find themselves frustrated, having midlife crises, don't know what to do with themselves when their kids grow up and leave home, and now you're not having to be a mother anymore or take care of kids, and you haven't worked or you haven't done anything else. You've allowed that to consume your life. You've allowed whatever your husband had going on to consume your life. You have a lot of people who end up with failed marriages after they don't have the kids in common, or you are out of touch with what's going on with your husband. And the real issue is you've been so far out of touch with what's going on with yourself, and you've been failing to show up and be your authentic self in your everyday life. You've steeped your identity in being a wife and a mother that nobody recognizes or connects with you. People fail to connect with who you present yourself to be, because who you present yourself to be isn't long lasting if it isn't your authentic self.
Ooh, that's a word. Because listen, that's a word. Because at first, I'll be real honest with you, I was gonna push back on some things you were saying at first, like that if your sole identity is wrapped up in being a mother or a wife. And I've heard women say, and the reason I was gonna push back is because I've heard women say, like, I feel like I'm called to be a mother. And I've heard mothers who say, like I love being a mother. Like I love doing this work. This is what I feel like I'm called to do. And that may be true in that season, or that they may have a certain grace over their life. But when you put it like that, like if who you are called to be is not long lasting, that ain't it.
There's only a period in time where you are responsible for nurturing life that God called into the world during a specific time through your womb. There's only a short period of time that you are called to do that and attend to that. And it's not that you stop mothering once your kids become adults. But you don't get to scapegoat your purpose because you are the mother of children. And a lot of women are lackluster and lazy about their assignments and their purpose, and they hide behind being a mother. If we gonna be real today, we gonna be real today.
Yeah.
Stop hiding behind being a mother. Stop hiding behind being a wife, because in the event that those things cease to be today, God called you here for a purpose and a destiny
Y'all say a whole
that is greater than those two things. That may be a part of your journey, and a part of your purpose may be connected to that. I'm not denying or minimizing or diminishing that at all. But we got to this conversation talking about how women are invisible. Who told you you didn't matter? What are all these microaggressions and overt aggressions about women who, that have made women believe the narrative that whatever their goals, dreams, aspirations, and purpose are need to be placed on the back burner to serve man and his, purpose, his life, his agenda, and to bear his children. God didn't call us to just be the bearer of men's children. He didn't call us to just be the wives of men. He called us to our own purpose and destiny. And it is supposed to be intertwined with that. But again, you have a lot of women who are lackluster and lazy about fulfilling their purpose and destiny, and they hide behind being a wife, mother, and they do not practice self-care. They do not, you know, nurture their gifts and their talents, and they do not lean into nurturing the skill sets that they need to fulfill purpose and destiny. And then they find themselves frustrated when they don't feel like they are fulfilled or getting what they need, but they quote unquote did everything right according to what they've been indoctrinated with.
Yeah. As you were sharing, it was making me, it made me think a couple of things. One of the most important things outside of the actual content of what we're sharing, I think, is what's next. And when I say what's next, what do you do when you find yourself at this intersection of I do realize that I have consistently put myself second. I do realize that I consider self-care extremely selfish. I do realize that I have a hard time simply buying something for myself that I enjoy. I have to make up a reason in my mind why I deserve that thing, other than the fact it's just something that I want. What happens once you come, in a sense, you raise your hand. Right now you're saying, yep, that's me. I now realize how important this part is in my life. That's question one. Question two is, what does this mean for our daughters? What does this mean for our babies? How are we teaching them self-care? How are we teaching them to center themselves? How are we teaching them that you are your first and only priority? How are we teaching them those things? And in my experience, I have a nonprofit also, Great Glam and Guts. We've been doing this work for now 8 years. Obviously, COVID put threw a wrench in everything. And so we weren't able to do the same type of work that we've done in person and speaking with the girls. We got some things coming up though. And it is, it blows my mind every year when I begin to develop deeper relationships with some of the young ladies, how difficult it is for them to express what they want, one, and how easy it is for them to take care of someone else. And when you don't have an idea of what you want, I think that points to not knowing who you are. And I'm not saying as a teen, you supposed to know everything in the world, but I think we really need to begin intentionally talking to our girls, putting our girls in these positions where they are coming to know themselves better, allowing them to make decisions that they are satisfied with. I think that comes with language. I think that comes with support when we're asking them, what do you want? Or even when they're younger. If they chose the blue sweater over the purple sweater, oh, why did you choose the blue sweater? Oh, that's a great choice. It's things like that, and not pushing our agenda on them. And so again, as we're growing, as we're moving as a community, I think it's crucial. Self-care, self-care, self-care. Spend some time with yourself and sincerely ask yourself, what do you want? What do you like? And just to be, if we're gonna be real, like you said, Danny, I still have to ask myself that in any given moment. I have to ask myself, Cameo, right now, what do you want?
And what do you need? Not just what you want. What do you need? If I ask you right now, how can I best support you? how would you answer that question? If you had access to unlimited resources, people resources, monetary resources, and someone was asking you, Oprah was asking you, anyone was asking you, how can I best support you right now in this moment? Would you be able to articulate what your needs and your desires are with regard to what it is that you've been called to do in this life?
That is the question, family. That is the question, good people. Like that, honestly, that's our homework. That is our homework. That is our homework. And I think charging our young people with that same question will help them to begin to think, to center themselves. I think once we get there as women, and this is a conversation between women, but men, you're a part of this conversation too, because you all have been taught from birth that it's okay to center yourself. You all have been taught that, to advocate for what you want, to get what you want, and you're comfortable with it, and not thinking twice about the next person. And so, because you know this, and because you have women around you, be intentional about creating that environment or pushing back on the women in their lives, in your lives, when you very clearly see that they aren't centering themselves and they're centering you. Do not take advantage of the situation.
That also, I want to bring balance to it too. Like you were saying, men are taught that, women are taught to have their experiences and identities to be validated by men. And so men, when you encounter women who are seeking validation from you, be responsible enough not to be selfish, and to funnel that back to the woman and say, well, what do you need? Or what do you want? Encourage a woman to think for herself. I will never forget Dr. Paul Elam teaching me to think for myself and asking me what I wanted, because I had never been taught to think for myself, or to think that I could actually advocate for or articulate what I wanted without it being shot down. I didn't think I had the right to do that. And he literally started asking me what I wanted. He was teaching me to think for myself. This voice that you hear now is a product of Dr. Paul Elam challenging me in the workplace. A Black man, a godly Black man, lover of his wife and family, seeing a young Black broken girl in his workplace who was working in administration and challenging me to want more and to be more. And because of the way that he challenged me to think, it really ended up causing me to walk into my purpose. And so, men, when it is paramount that you don't simply sit back and enjoy the benefits of women being all sacrificing for you, and that you empower them to lean into who God has called them to be, and to articulate their needs, and to have realistic expectations of you and themselves, to make sure that they manifest what it is that they need for themselves if nobody does it for them.
All right, there you have it. This is the Good Girl Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I also am very intentional about today. We are celebrating the life of Breonna Taylor. If you haven't already, please Google Breonna Taylor. Please hashtag her name. Please say her name. She is one of the Black women who has died at the hands of police brutality as well. And we want to ensure that those who are responsible for her death are brought to justice as well. If you love the work we're doing here on the Good Girl Podcast, there are so many different ways you can support. first and foremost, you can make sure you are subscribed to the Good Girl Podcast on whatever platform you use. Also, make sure you leave a comment. Comments really boost our ratings. Comments encourage other people to listen as well. And then secondly, share this podcast to another Black woman who you want to remind that she needs to prioritize herself, that her calling, that her purpose, that whoever she is becoming is too important for her to put herself second. And last and certainly not least, if you have it in your heart to do, you can support us by purchasing some products in our store. We have a Believe in the Good line. We have t-shirts, we have sweatshirts, we have coffee mugs, we have posters. We have this one shirt, y'all. I really like it. It's called That's It. You know, when you're looking at somebody, you like, that's it. And it has the definition of that's it on the sweatshirt. We're going to have a t-shirt just like it shortly. And if you are listening to the Good Girl Podcast, feel free to plug in Good Family and you'll get you a nice little discount. That's what you get for being a part of the Good Family. Just plug in the words Good Family. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting. I am Cameo King, and this is the Good Girl Podcast.